this email? What does it mean?
Communication is the imparting or exchanging of information or news.
The single biggest problem in communication is the illusion that it has taken place.
Conversation is the oral exchange of sentiments, observations, opinions, or ideas.
Forbes Books Radio presents The Conversation with Clinton M. Padgett.
Welcome back to my conversation with Cliff Oxford, serial entrepreneur, columnist, and author. We begin part two by discussing the challenge of growing so quickly while still figuring out how to run a company. So as you're developing these new products, though, trying to expand into other markets and other areas, even with your existing clients, you know, you're doing project work. And again, I'm always big on communication and trying to make sure the message is clear. Did you have really good experiences where you did something and like that really worked perfectly like I thought it would, or other experiences where you're like, I don't understand. I thought I was very clear, but they're doing the exact opposite of what I wanted my team to do.
Well,
because when you're small, obviously you have more control. But when you get to be 350 people, I got to think you're not having contact with each one of those 350 people each day, checking their work. So
yeah, we all were very clear on the mission. I think when you're growing that fast, and some fair criticism of me would be, one day it was run left, the next day it's run right, and the next day it would be run in the middle. And to be honest with you, we were figuring it out as we go. Thank goodness we had more time than the day I probably would have had splattered, because you have a lot less time to figure it out. But we were figuring out even how to run a company as we go. UPS, I was a tech guy. So we're having to figure this thing out, and you're signing up major clients. So there was some run left, run right. No, I meant in through the middle, start, stop, start, stop. There was some of that for sure, but I think it wasn't so much bad communication as it was just figuring it out and going, hey, Cliff, this didn't work. We'll stop doing it. Hey, this did work. Do more of that. Do more of that. Because we were definitely figuring it out. And that's what really gives me passion to build the Oxford Center for Entrepreneurs that you were part of, is that I didn't want other entrepreneurs have to figure it out and go through the pain that we did. And I know if I had known a few things at age 29, we would have been a multi-billion-dollar company.
Yeah, I did meet you through the Oxford Center. And in fact, the first meeting that I came to was at the Porsche Center here in Atlanta. And I want to say there's probably 60 or more people in the meeting. These are quarterly meetings, if I recall. Do you see that going forward? Do you think, because to me, it was very powerful to have these meetings. And everybody says, oh, virtually you can do it. It's just a Zoom. But I remember having multiple conversations over coffee breaks, or, walking to the restroom or walking to lunch and coming back. I mean, you don't have that organic conversation on a Zoom call because it's,
we would never get the level of CEOs and founders there because these were not startups, as you know. They were like your company that had been successful and were growing and wanted to know how to expand. I don't think I love Zoom. We're on Zoom right now.
Yeah.
I was an early adopter of Zoom 2 years ago.
I remember that, yeah.
I was saying how great Zoom was before Zoom was Zoom. And Eric, the CEO, I've known for a long time. He's very, very good. I've invested in Zoom a long time ago. So, just specifically the Oxford Center, it would never work. I mean, I'm just telling you, because they got many other opportunities to do Zoom, okay?
Right.
Those particular people that were part of our portfolio, they were part of it because they couldn't get that experience that you experienced anywhere else. We were the only game in town. Right. Obviously there's other people holding meetings, there's YPO, there's EO, but what we were doing, there was nothing else like it. They would go there and spend their time because that's the only place they could get what we were offering. So I don't think so. When I started writing the morning report, that was read just about, by every CEO in the group religiously. But, I learned something from Jim Casey at UPS. You have to design things. And that morning report was designed that I got maybe 2.5 minutes of their time. I'm going to take 2.5 minutes of their time, and I got to deliver 20 times the value of the Wall Street Journal.
I remember there was I can't remember the exact number, but they had done some research, and the amount of people who actually read that thing that got it was off the charts, right? It was very, very high. The number of people who actually opened it and read it.
HubSpot still calls me today. You're familiar with HubSpot.
Yep.
And they still call me today trying to figure out why our open rate was so high. They go, Cliff, 69% open rate on an email, a mass email going out is just unheard of. And I think it was by design. Like I said, guys, we got to get 2.5 minutes. And, Forbes ran this thing for the first 3 months, but we had a parting because a very amicable, very friendly departing, because I said, you can't have a link in it. They go, You're crazy. You're nuts. Everybody has links. And I said, no, I'm telling you, these guys will get distracted with the link. And the next day they won't read it because they'll go, I'll get distracted with a link. I said, it can't have a link. And that led to a departure. And also they thought some of my things I wrote was too controversial.
Well, you were controversial, but I always felt it was on purpose.
I said, I can be uncontroversial, but nobody's going to read the darn thing.
You would always have these mea culpas later about everybody who called you to complain about what you had said.
Yes. We had a lot of that. We had, but I said, I can write one and nobody reads it, but why do I want to do that? Why do I want to send out something nobody's reading? That whole Oxford Center was by design. It was a very designed platform for the rebel entrepreneurs who had made it.
Right. I just felt, and from attending quite a few of those meetings, I felt a lot of the value that came out of it was not necessarily the presentations, which, you had some credible guests, but to me, it was the personal one-on-one or one-on-two conversations that were sidebar conversations
we're the only people that get those people in the same room. So that you're absolutely right, Clint. It was but what I'm saying is, you go to a Chamber of Commerce meeting and there you got people from all types of businesses. At our meetings, it was people that really were going for it. Yeah. They had something, they were profitable, and they were going to be the category leader.
Right. One of your other articles that I read, you talked about BHAGs, right? The big, hairy, audacious goals, and how you didn't really like those, and you kind of like the managing by commitment. So talk a little bit about that. What is it about managing by commitment that you liked over the BHAG?
That's a good question. That was boy, you know how to touch on all the great points, because BHAG is associated with visionary entrepreneurs, and sometimes I'm put in that category. And I went out against the BHAG because I think it's a little bit too much la-la land. And I think you got to say, this is what we're going to do, and you got to make a commitment to get it done. You got to be held accountable, and there's got to be a measurable relationship to it. And BHAGs is a little bit of Disney World, and I love Disney World when I took my kids there. But the growing these companies it's not Disney World. I wish I could say it was a lot of fun and it's the most exhilarating experience, but it's a little bit different so I said management by commitment. You say you're going to do this. Now do it.
Yeah, I just interviewed Keith Ferrazzi, who wrote Never Eat Alone, #1 New York Times bestseller. And we were talking about the same concept, and it's about mutual accountability and peer-to-peer accountability to each other, so it's really that's our mantra as well as managing by commitment. It's about, you tell me what you're going to do and I'm going to accept that, but then you deliver on what you tell me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So that's where I have a little problem with the BHAGs. But now I think, hey, you should put down on management by commitment the grandest goals you can think of that we can achieve. Really think big. Don't think small. Think big. You can still think big and you can think commitment.
Well, I think the key phrase I heard in there was that you can achieve, right?
Yes.
We got to create the flux capacitor and go to DeLorean and go back in time. It's got to be something that we can do without breaking the laws of physics. But yeah, you can think large scale, and you can think important, but that we can actually achieve.
Even at STI, I remember I said, we can beat IBM, and we often did, but you got to remember that didn't matter to them because they were winning so many accounts. Right. But our little account didn't matter much to them, but it did to us. And I'm like, we're going to beat anybody that we go up against. I never said we were going to be as big as IBM. I just said we're better than IBM. And that commitment is a different commitment.
For sure. So you've worked, obviously you've had your time with big companies, but you've also done kind of your own startup, and through the Oxford Center and your other engagements, you've met with a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of small businesses, the medium-sized businesses. When you think about what are some of the key mistakes that you think that they have made that they could have done better?
The key mistake they made is the same one that another one I made. Reason we weren't a $1 billion company. I might write a book that says, I could be a billionaire if I didn't chase so many shiny objects. That's the one that still gets everybody. I mean, yesterday I was in Birmingham meeting with a very fine entrepreneur, and they said, we got 2 routes we can go here, and we're going to do both routes. And I said, no, I want you to pick one route and put all of your energy into that route. And you're going to have to you got to make your bed here. You got to say, this is what we believe in. And then we went through an exercise to help them determine which one it should be.
Right.
Which you can do. And what are you really aligned with? And I said, you got to forget about this other one, because you're going to do both poorly if you try to do both. So that's the most common mistake, is too many cooks in the kitchen, whatever you want to call it, too many irons in the fire. It's just too many. You got to focus.
Stop chasing the shiny objects.
Yep, shiny object syndrome.
Or find one shiny object, singular.
Object. Yes.
So let's kind of bring it back to the current situation we're living in today. And if you watch the news, it's pretty depressing, obviously. And everybody talks about the new normal. And I got to tell you, if I hear the word pivot one more time, I think I might throw up. But that's a word I want to see retired after this. That and flatten the curve. I'd like to see that phrase go away too. But obviously, this is just something for me, and maybe it's my Southern upbringing, but I just think there are people in the world who enjoy being around other people. And I can't remember who, I think it was Cushman and Wakefield who came out with, they designed a new facility at their Amsterdam facility headquarters that's 6 foot, they call it the 6 foot office, 6 feet office. And what it is, they've relocated all the furniture so that nobody gets within 6 feet of each other. They've actually got pathways on the carpet in the office, so when you're inside of somebody's 6 foot circle. And they have watches now that could tell if you track, if you come inside of a 6 foot window. And I thought to myself when I read this article, I thought, I don't want to work there. I mean, that's when I look at you, I don't see a germ carrier. What I see is Cliff Oxford, somebody that I know and relate to and have bonded with. And if I look at all the individuals around me and all I see are germs, I don't know that that's a world I want to live in. I got to tell you, that's a bit concerning.
I got a different take on this. There's always too much hype when you're in it. And I think when we get past this, I think there will be some changes, but it's going to go back 80% like it was. I think there'll be 20% changes when it's all said and done. Now, and there are some substantial changes in that 20%. But, human beings, I think, like working with other people. I mean, if you start working from home, you can get the task done. But where's the creativity? Steve Jobs was never one for let his people work at home.
Right.
He says it's the water cooler conversations that's the most important, and who you pass when you're walking out the door to go home, and the walk to the car together. So I know that some people says there's going to be some change, but I think it'll be 80% back to like it was.
I mean, I hope so. I think what I'd like to see the change being more, maybe we have better air filtration systems and things like that. But I don't want to think of everybody around me as a pariah that I can't get within a 6 foot circle.
I think we're going to see some necessary change. I think on the digitalization, it sped that up for sure. But let them be. I saw where Zuckerberg said a lot of his people are going to work from home for the next 5 years. Well, Zuckerberg has a right to change his mind once he sees over a year or 2 years where's all this creativity going. He could also order them back to their office. So it's some change, but I think it's overhyped.
I think you're right. I think a lot of times the pendulum swings too much one way and then eventually swings back the other. But
absolutely.
I don't think the New York real estate market is going to go to zero, right? There's going to be some rethinking of things, but I don't think it's going to go to zero.
One thing we know, New York real estate always comes back.
Yes. In fact, I'm happy to buy some right now if I can, right?
Yeah. It will be back.
It will be back. I didn't know this, but apparently you ran for office back in the day.
Yes, for the United States Senate, after I sold STI, I had the distinction of being probably the only entrepreneur in the state that supported Bill Clinton twice. Many people told me, we forgave you the first time, but the second time. Now, and I will say today, I'm a flaming independent, and I was in the won the runoff to get into the runoff. But the problem I had with politics is, in business, if you got a good idea and you work at it hard enough, you can be successful. I think you can be successful. In politics, you can have a good idea and come in last. I was glad to have gotten to the runoff, but I wasn't even really proud of myself for doing that, by the way, by what you have to do in politics. But going back to John F. Kennedy, if you look at it, it's a great way to serve, but that nobility has long been lost.
Right. The water cooler conversation is what I was talking about earlier in our talk. That's the thing that I don't think Zoom can ever, or any technology can ever replace, right? We can have great technology, and while you and I are sitting here looking at each other on the screen, we're getting a lot of that we would get in person. But at some point, I got to put my headphones down and walk to get some coffee. But if I'm in the office, you're going to walk with me, and we're going to continue our conversation while we go get the coffee and come back. And that doesn't happen on these virtual sessions. And I've seen projects where there was a tremendous amount of value added to future projects by conversations that happened literally while on a coffee break. That would never happen in a virtual setting.
It's underestimated. It's very much underestimated. And I plan to write in the next couple of weeks on this topic, that what we're talking about, and I will get spears and arrows from everywhere.
Yeah.
Because I'm gonna say we forget about the value of people working with people face to face. And again, I was an early promoter of Zoom 4 years ago, and said, get on Zoom, entrepreneurs. This is a great tool. I was way ahead of that. In fact, I had worked out with Zoom to do a TV show on Zoom for entrepreneurs, but I sold the company before we got around to it. So I am all for Zoom. But now, some of these big corporations where they're exploiting a competitive advantage. Yeah, some of those people can work from home just as well they work in their cube.
Right.
My particular space is the emerging brands, emerging markets, and that's going to be tougher.
Yeah, I think also there's the organic conversation is really, really important to a lot of work, whether it's creative or even execution of projects that I do. It's still important to have these conversations. And that don't mean that all conversations have to be face-to-face. I certainly think there's a place for posting on Jira and sending off a short text message or an email. But what I find is, as human beings, we have this desire to want to check something off our to-do list as done. And that's easy for me to do if I can do it in send you off an email saying it's done. But if I have to pick up the phone and talk to you, I might find out that not only is it not done, I have 3 other things I have to go do now. And so my tendency then is to not want to talk to you. So I just want to send you an email, and emails are great. And, they're fine. Like today, maybe after we talk, I might send you an email that would give some follow-up information, but everything doesn't have to be a conversation.
Yeah. I'm a student of anthropology. If I could have majored in what I really wanted to major in, it would have been anthropology. But I was afraid I couldn't get a job. I'm from South Georgia. It's like you go to college and pay that kind of money, you get major in something you get a job in. But I still read a lot about anthropology, and face to face, humans being social is key to our survival. It's in our DNA. It's wired in our brain, and isolation we're not real good at. We get lonely. And that's all based on survival. If I start feeling lonely, I'm going to die.
Right.
I'm gonna write this, and I'm gonna say, anthropology's on my side. Pop culture is not on my side with this, but anthropology is. So I look forward to writing it, because I think it needs to be said, because everybody else is saying this is the greatest thing since sliced bread.
Yeah, I think there's some places for it, but I'm also a tribe guy myself. I believe in the tribe has a better chance for survival than 15 individuals would. Working together as a team, we're much better off.
Yeah, this podcast we're doing, one-on where it's just you and me. This is very appropriate, a Zoom call, because it's just you and me, and we finished with this. We're not going to have to build a company out of it.
Right.
We move on, and you and I will meet and talk about something else. So it's a different job that's got to be done.
One of the quotes that I like to use is that I think it's Shaw that said it, George Bernard Shaw, but the single biggest problem with communication is the illusion that it has happened, right? And so that's also one of the things I think, that when you just do everything one-way communication through a text or an email or something like that, you think you've communicated, but the other end may not have gotten your message appropriately. And then you had mentioned, on the running for office thing, it's not always the person with the best idea that wins. So I don't know if you're familiar with Donald Miller out of Nashville, Tennessee, who has a company called Story Brand. It's about storytelling, but it's also about for business purposes. And I remember I was meeting with him and he said this, and it resonated with me. And that is, it's not always the person with the best idea that wins the business or wins the election. It's the person that can best communicate and clarify the message. That's who wins. And so we have to be clear in our messaging.
Ultimately, I agree with that. Ultimately, that's true. Definitely true. I think the distinction I was making, if you've got a good idea and it adds value and it helps people, in business, you got a shot at making it.
Right.
In politics, it has nothing to do with it.
All right. Well, I appreciate your time today, Cliff. Thanks for all of your good insights. Say hello to the Okefenokee Swamp next time you're down there for me. And I look forward to speaking to you soon.
And that will be next weekend. So I will let it know you're thinking about the good old swamp. Thank you.
All right, man. Thanks.
I really appreciate it. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to The Conversation with Clinton M. Padgett. To find out more about Clint, go to projectsuccess.com or pick up Clint's book, The Project Success Method, at amazon.com. This has been a production of Forbes Books Radio.